The Galactic Military Academy sat on a world called Valoran Prime. It was a place where young soldiers from 47 different alien species came to learn the art of war. Humans had only joined the galactic community 12 years ago, and they were still considered strange newcomers. Most aliens looked at human cadets with curiosity, sometimes with suspicion, and often with a quiet sense of superiority. On this particular day, all the first-year cadets had gathered in the weapons testing arena. It was a massive, circular room with high walls and bright lights. At the center stood a platform, and on that platform was something that made every alien cadet gasp with admiration. Commander. The Zethrak of the Vorlani Empire stood proudly beside a suit of armor. He was tall and thin, with 4 arms and 4 eyes that moved independently of each other. His skin was pale blue, and when he spoke, his words came out as clicking sounds that a translator device turned into words everyone could understand. The armor behind him was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. It was black as midnight, covered in geometric patterns that glowed with soft blue light. The metal seemed to drink in the arena lights, giving it an almost magical appearance. "This," Commander Zethrak announced, "spreading all 4 arms wide, is Vorlani's siege armor. It has a Class 9 defensive rating. This is the greatest achievement in personal protection technology in the entire galaxy." The alien cadets whispered to each other. Everyone knew about the Vorlani. They had been making armor for 8,000 years. No one in the galaxy could match their skill. Their defensive technology had protected countless soldiers across hundreds of worlds. "The material is a trade secret," Zethrak continued. "Our ancestors developed it over thousands of years of research. The Galactic Standards Committee has rated this armor as effectively unbreakable by any known personal weapon." He pressed a button, and a holographic display appeared in the air. It showed test footage of the armor being attacked. Plasma bolts, the most common weapon in space combat, splashed against the surface like water hitting a rock. Kinetic rounds, basically very fast bullets, crumpled on impact like they were made of paper. Even a focused particle beam, one of the most powerful weapons available, only left a tiny scorch mark that faded within seconds. "No species has ever breached Vorlani's siege armor in actual combat," Zethrak declared. "It is quite simply perfection." In the back row of the arena, a group of human cadets sat together. They were easy to spot because they looked so different from everyone else. No extra limbs, no unusual skin colors, no special abilities. Just ordinary humans in their gray cadet uniforms. One of them, a young man named Danny Cole, leaned forward with sudden interest. He was 20 years old, with short brown hair and a strong build that came from growing up on a heavy gravity colony world. His muscles were denser than those of humans born on Earth. He had spent his childhood doing hard physical labor. His friend Lisa Park noticed his expression. She was smart and careful, the kind of person who always thought before acting. She had known Danny for 2 years, and she recognized that look in his eyes. "Danny," she whispered, "whatever you are thinking, please do not do it." Danny just grinned at her. "I am only curious," the demonstration continued. Commander Zethrak invited cadets from different species to try damaging a test plate made of the armor material. The plate was about the size of a door, mounted on a stand in the center of the arena. A Krellian cadet went first. Krellians were insect-like creatures with hard shells and powerful claws. This one carried a plasma cutter, a tool that could slice through starship hulls. She pressed it against the armor plate and activated it. The plasma burned bright blue, hot enough to melt most metals instantly. But after 30 seconds, she stepped back. The armor was completely untouched. Next came a Men-3. These beings were made of living crystal, beautiful and strange. They could generate sonic vibrations powerful enough to shatter stone. The Men-3 placed its crystalline hands on the plate and hummed. The sound was painful to human ears, even from far away. Windows in the arena cracked, but the armor did not even vibrate. HFY tried after that. These creatures looked like giant slugs, but they could produce acid strong enough to dissolve almost anything. The HFY sprayed the plate with its natural acid. Smoke rose. The smell was terrible. But when the smoke cleared, the armor was still perfect. "As you can see," Zethrak said, his voice full of satisfaction. The armor is truly beyond any challenge. No weapon, no natural ability, no technology in the known galaxy can defeat it. Mind if I try that? Every head in the arena turned. Danny Cole had raised his hand, and now he was walking down the steps toward the testing platform. He moved with an easy confidence that made several alien cadets shift. Uncomfortably in their seats, Lisa covered her face with her hands. "Oh no," she muttered. Commander Zethrak. S4 eyes blinked one after another. This was a sign of surprise in his species. "Human cadet," he said slowly. "You wish to attempt to damage Vorlani's siege armor?" "If that is allowed, sir?" "Yes." A wave of amusement passed through the Vorlani observers in the upper gallery. One of them made a sound that the translator turned into laughter. The very idea of a human, a member of a species that had only recently discovered faster-than-light travel, trying to damage the greatest defensive technology in the galaxy was simply funny to them. "By all means," Zethrak said, making a welcoming gesture with all four arms. "Please select any testing weapon you wish from the rack." Danny walked past the weapons rack without even looking at it. He stopped in front of the armor plate and studied it carefully, tilting his head to one side like a curious dog. "Actually, Commander," he said, "I was wondering if I could use something from my personal kit instead." The commander's amusement grew. The translator conveyed his tone perfectly. "You believe a human personal weapon can accomplish what military-grade galactic armaments cannot?" "I would like to find out, sir." Zethrak made another expansive gesture. "Then by all means, young human, show us what your species can do." Danny reached into his cadet jacket and pulled out a small object. Several alien cadets craned their necks to see what amazing human technology he had brought. What they saw confused them. It was a knife. Not a laser knife or a plasma blade or anything advanced. Just a simple metal knife with a wooden handle wrapped in old cord. The blade was scratched and dull from years of use. It looked like something from a museum. "What is that?" one of the Vorlani observers asked, genuinely puzzled. "It is called a knife," Danny explained. "This particular one belonged to my grandfather. He carried it when he served in something called the Marine Corps, back on Earth. He gave it to my father, and my father gave it to me." Commander Zethrak's amusement turned to confusion. "A blade? You intend to defeat our armor with a primitive cutting tool?" "No, sir." Danny turned the knife over in his hands, looking at it fondly. "I am going to defeat it with about 5 million years of human evolution." Lisa Park groaned. In the seats around her, the other human cadets exchanged nervous glances. They all knew Danny. They all knew he was about to do something either brilliant or incredibly stupid. Probably both. The arena had gone completely silent. Even the machines that controlled the air and temperature seemed to be holding their breath. Every eye, whether 2 or 4 or 6, was fixed on the young human standing before the armor plate commander. Zethrak watched with the patient amusement of someone who already knew exactly how this would end. Vorlani's siege armor had been tested against the most advanced weapons in the entire galaxy. Plasma cannons, particle beams, molecular disruptors, and weapons that humans had never even heard of had all failed. A primitive knife in the hands of a young human would not even leave a scratch. Danny Cole stood before the armor plate, his grandfather's knife in his right hand. He did not attack immediately. Instead, he seemed to be thinking, studying the armor's surface with an intensity that made some of the observers uncomfortable. His eyes moved slowly across every part of the plate, examining the glowing patterns, the edges, the places where different sections connected. "Cadet," Zethrak said after a long moment. "Whenever you are ready." "I am just trying to figure out the best angle," Danny replied calmly. His voice was relaxed, like he was discussing something ordinary. "It will not matter. The armor is completely resistant to physical damage from any angle." "Unbreakable?" "Yes, sir." "You mentioned that." Danny shifted his grip on the knife, holding it in a way that seemed strange to the watching aliens. "My grandfather used to say something. He said that everything is breakable if you understand how it was made." Zethrak's 4 eyes narrowed. "Your grandfather was not a Vorlani armorsmith with 8,000 years of tradition behind him." "No, sir." "He was a demolition expert. His job was to blow things up. Before the commander could respond, Danny moved. But he did not strike where everyone expected. He did not aim for the center of the plate or try to cut through the glowing patterns. Instead, he dropped to one knee and drove the knife blade into a tiny seam at the very bottom of the plate. Where the main section connected to the mounting frame, the blade slid in about 2 centimeters, then stopped. It had found a gap, but the gap was too small to allow further penetration. Zethrak made a clicking sound that the translator turned into a sigh. As I said, Cadet, the armor is simply too strong for such primitive methods. Your blade cannot possibly generate enough force to cause any real damage. Danny did not respond. Instead, he did something strange. He twisted the knife handle sharply to the left, while at the same time bringing his other hand down on the end, out of the knife in a hammer blow. It was a precise, practiced motion, like he had done it 1,000 times before. There was a sound. Not a loud sound. It was like ice cracking on a frozen lake, a sharp snap that seemed too small to matter. Then a section of the armor plate, about the size of Danny's palm, simply fell away. It hit the ground with a clatter that echoed through the silent arena. Nobody moved. Commander Zethrak stared at the gap in his people's greatest achievement. His 4 eyes blinked rapidly and out of order, a sign of extreme shock in his species. His pale blue skin seemed to turn slightly gray. "That is not possible," he said finally. His voice was barely above a whisper. Danny stood up slowly, tucking the knife back into his jacket. "The armor itself is incredibly strong, sir. You are absolutely right about that. I could hit it all day and never leave a mark." He pointed at the spot where the section had broken away. "But the bonding compound that holds the different plates together is not made of the same material. It is about 3% weaker at the molecular level." The silence in the arena was crushing. Some of the alien cadets looked like they had forgotten how to breathe. "If you apply force at exactly the right angle to that junction point," Danny continued, "while the compound is under torsional stress from a twisting motion, it creates something called a cascading failure. The molecular bonds start breaking in a chain reaction, and the whole section comes apart." "How?" Zethrak seemed to be struggling to form words. His translator kept clicking but produced nothing. Finally, he managed to speak. "How did you know this?" "I did not know it for certain, sir. Not until I tried." Danny shrugged, like what he had done was nothing special. "But I grew up on a mining colony. My father worked in demolition. His job was breaking apart asteroids so we could get to the valuable minerals inside. You learn to look for weak points in strong structures. It is just how humans think. It's just how humans think." One of the Vorlani observers repeated. The translator gave the words a tone of horror in the observation gallery above the arena. Danny could see important-looking aliens in fancy uniforms. A Vorlani military officer was speaking urgently into a communication device. Danny could not hear the words clearly, but he caught a few phrases. Security breach, fundamental, design flaw, classified emergency. 8. Started to realize that maybe he had done something more serious than he intended. Lisa Park pushed through the crowd of alien cadets and made her way down to where Danny was standing. Her face was pale, and she looked like she could not decide whether to hug him or hit him. "You absolute idiot," she said. "Do you have any idea what you have just done?" Danny tried to smile. "Passed the practical exam? You have just exposed a critical vulnerability in the Vorlani Empire's primary defensive technology. In front of representatives from 30 different alien species, in a public demonstration that was being recorded for training purposes." Danny's confident expression faded. "Oh, yeah. Oh." Lisa grabbed his arm. "That armor protects their soldiers, their ships, their space stations. You just showed every potential enemy in the galaxy how to defeat it." Around them, the arena was descending into chaos. Vorlani officers were shouting orders. Cadets from various species were talking excitedly. Some looked impressed. Some looked afraid. A group of Krellians were pointing at Danny and making sounds that might have been admiration or might have been threats. Commander Zethrak had recovered enough to approach them. His forearms were folded across his chest in a posture that Danny's translator helpfully identified as controlled fury. Was the way Vorlani stood when they wanted to hurt someone but were forcing themselves to remain calm. Human Cadet Danny Cole, he said. His voice was carefully flat, showing no emotion. You will accompany me to the Commandant's office. Immediately. Yes, sir. Do not speak. Do not touch anything. Do not try to run. I understand, sir. 4 Vorlani guards in full armor surrounded Danny. He noticed that one of them was carefully avoiding putting weight on his left side, where the armor plates joined together. The guard kept looking at Danny like he was a dangerous animal. As Danny was led away, surrounded by soldiers who could have killed him easily, Lisa heard one of the Krellian cadets whisper to another, "Did you see what he did? With just a knife?" "That is why everyone is afraid of the humans," the other Krellian replied. "Not because of their weapons. Their weapons are primitive. Not because of their strength. They are weaker than many species. Everyone is afraid of humans because of how they think. They look at something strong and immediately start searching for ways to break it." Lisa watched Danny disappear through a doorway, still surrounded by guards. She did not know if she would ever see her friend again. The Vorlani took their technology very seriously. They might demand his execution. They might imprison him forever. They might do things she could not even imagine. But she also knew Danny. He had not done this to cause trouble. He had done it because he genuinely wanted to know if he could. That was the human curse and the human gift. They could never leave anything alone. They always had to test, to push, to discover, even if it meant risking everything. Especially if it meant risking everything. The Commandant's office occupied the highest floor of the Academy's central tower. Giant windows offered a view of Valoran Prime's purple mountains and silver forests. On any other day, Danny might have stopped to admire the alien beauty of it all. Today, he was too busy wondering if he was about to be executed. Commandant Verthax was a Menthari, one of those strange beings made of living crystal. She was ancient, thousands of years old, and her body caught the light in ways that made her seem to glow from within. She was known throughout the galaxy for her wisdom and her fairness. Danny hoped that reputation was accurate. He was not alone in the room. Commander Zethrak stood to one side, his forearms rigid with barely controlled anger. Next to him was a Vorlani in expensive robes, who had been introduced as Ambassador Zethtel. The ambassador looked like he wanted to tear Danny apart with his bare hands. Most surprisingly, a holographic projection flickered at the far end of the room. It showed Admiral Grace Kim of the United Earth Navy, a stern woman with gray hair and eyes that seemed to see everything. Danny had never met her, but he knew her reputation. She was the highest-ranking human in the galactic military structure. Cadet Cole, Commandant Verthax began. Her voice sounded like wind chimes, beautiful, but somehow also serious. "Do you understand the full implications of your actions today?" Danny stood at attention, his eyes fixed on a point above the Commandant's head. "I am beginning to understand, ma'am. The Vorlani ambassador has lodged a formal protest with the Galactic Compact. They are demanding your immediate removal from the Academy. They are also suggesting that you should face criminal charges for the theft of military secrets." Danny's stomach felt like it was filled with ice. "With respect, ma'am, I did not steal anything. I just noticed a weak point and tested it. Everything I did happened in a public demonstration. In doing so, you exposed a flaw that the Vorlani have been hiding for 3 centuries. The Commandant's tone carried no judgment, just facts. Their armor has never been truly unbreakable. They simply made sure that no one ever discovered how to break it. Until today, Ambassador Zethtel made an angry gesture, all 4 arms waving. This human violated the sanctity of our technology through deception and trickery. He must have had inside information. There is no way he could have known about the bonding compound vulnerability without stealing classified data. Used a knife his grandfather gave him. Admiral Kim's holographic form was slightly fuzzy because of the distance, but her voice came through clearly. In a public demonstration where your commander personally invited him to try, there was no deception, no theft, and no violation of any law I am aware of. The Vorlani Armor Accords of 2847 clearly state that any attempt to reverse engineer our defensive technology is an act of war, the ambassador shot back. Those accords apply to technology shared under treaty, Admiral Kim replied calmly. You were showing off, Ambassador. You wanted everyone to see how impressive your armor was. My cadet simply accepted your invitation. The room fell into a tense silence. Danny could feel the hatred radiating from the Vorlani officials like heat from a fire. But he also noticed something else. Commandant Verthax was watching him with something that might have been curiosity. Cadet Cole, she said finally, I have a question for you. When you examined the armor, what did you actually see? Danny thought carefully before answering. I saw something that was trying too hard to look perfect, ma'am. Things that are truly strong do not usually need to advertise it. The armor had all those glowing patterns and ceremonial designs. It was beautiful. But underneath all that, it was still just pieces held together. And everything has joints. Joints are where things come apart. You learned this from your father, the demolition worker. From my father? Yes. And from my grandfather before him, and from just growing up human, I suppose. Danny paused, trying to find the right words. We have always been good at breaking things. Rocks, walls, problems, systems. When we see something solid, some part of our brain automatically starts looking for the crack. Ambassador Zethtil made a sound of disgust. You see why these creatures are dangerous? They are destroyers by nature. They cannot help themselves. They see something beautiful, and they want to smash it. With respect, Ambassador, Danny said, his voice steady, even though his heart was pounding. We are also builders. We break things so we can make better things. My people went from living in caves to building starships in about 10,000 years. We did that by constantly breaking what did not work and building what did.
Admiral Kim smiled slightly at that.
Well, said Cadet. Commandant Verthax rose from her seat. She was tall for a Menthari, and the light passing through her crystalline body created tiny rainbows on the walls. I have reached a decision. Everyone in the room went still. Cadet Cole will not be expelled. He will not face criminal charges. The Vorlani protest is officially noted but denied. Ambassador Zethtil began to sputter with rage. But the Commandant held up a hand. However, she continued, You will be transferred to a special program, effective immediately. Danny blinked. Ma'am? The Galactic Compact has struggled with a problem for many years. Defensive technologies are constantly evolving, but our ability to test them properly is not kept up. We approve armor, shields, and protection systems based on limited testing, and then we are surprised when they fail in actual combat. She paused, her crystal form shifting slightly. You, Cadet Cole, have demonstrated an unusual ability to identify vulnerabilities that others miss. We would like you to do this professionally. You want me to break things? Danny asked, not quite believing what he was hearing. We want you to find weaknesses before our enemies do. You will work with a team of specialists from multiple species. Your job will be to test defensive systems across the entire compact. Every new armor, every new shield, every new protective technology will come to your team first. Ambassador Zethtil finally found his voice. This is outrageous. You are rewarding this human for humiliating the Vorlani Empire. You are giving him official permission to destroy our work. I am recognizing a valuable skill and putting it to use for the benefit of all compact members. The Commandant replied calmly, including the Vorlani. Think carefully, Ambassador. Would you prefer that your armor's weakness be discovered by enemies rather than allies? Would you prefer to lose soldiers in battle because no one told you about the flaw in your design? The ambassador had no answer to that. After the meeting, Admiral Kim's hologram remained while the aliens filed out of the room. The Vorlani representatives left without saying goodbye, their anger obvious in every movement. Cole, the Admiral, said once they were alone, You have just been handed an incredible opportunity. Do not waste it. I will not, ma'am. And for future reference, the next time you decide to embarrass an entire galactic empire in front of everyone, maybe give your commanding officer a warning first. I have spent the last 3 hours trying to prevent an interstellar incident. Danny had the good sense to look embarrassed. Understood, ma'am. I apologize for the trouble. Admiral Kim's expression softened slightly. Do not apologize. You did something impressive today. Just remember that impressive actions often have complicated consequences. You are not just a cadet anymore. You are about to become someone important. Act like it. The hologram flickered and disappeared, leaving Danny alone in the commandant's office. Through the windows, he could see the purple mountains and the silver forests. Somewhere out there, Lisa was probably worried sick about him. He needed to find her. He needed to tell her that he was not going to prison after all, and he needed to start thinking about his new job. Finding weaknesses, breaking things that were supposed to be unbreakable, protecting the galaxy by showing people where their defenses would fail. For the first time since that morning, Danny smiled. Maybe this was exactly what he was meant to do. 6 months had passed since the incident at the academy. Danny Cole now stood in the testing facility of the newly formed Vulnerability Assessment Division. Most people just called them the Breakers. It was a simple name for a team with a complicated job. The Breakers operated from a converted space station floating in neutral territory. It was not fancy, but it had everything they needed. Testing chambers, analysis labs, weapons ranges, and a common room where the team could eat together and share ideas. The team itself was something special. 8 different species working together toward a common goal. Some of them had been enemies in the past. Some of them still did not fully trust each other, but they were learning to cooperate, and that was what mattered. Lisa Park had transferred to join Danny almost immediately. She was the team's mathematician, the one who could look at a structure and calculate exactly how much force it would take to break it. Her careful thinking balanced Danny's instinctive approach perfectly. Voss was a Krellian engineer. It's an insect-like creature with a hard shell and powerful claws. He understood machines better than anyone Danny had ever met. If something had moving parts, Voss could tell you exactly how it worked and exactly how it could fail. Crystalline 7 was a Menthry physicist. Like all Menthry, she was made of living crystal and communicated through vibrations that the translator turned into words. She specialized in energy systems and force fields. Nothing that involved energy could hide its secrets from her for long. The most surprising team member was Kethril Vorlani, who had voluntarily asked to join the Breakers. While most of his species still hated Danny for what he had done, Kethril had found the demonstration inspiring rather than insulting. He was a materials scientist, and he believed that finding weaknesses was the first step toward making things stronger. Today's test subject, Kethril announced, his 4 arms manipulating a holographic display, is the new YTHKA kinetic barrier. They claim it can stop anything up to and including a ship-mounted railgun. Danny studied the barrier through the observation window. It floated in the test chamber, a shimmering wall of energy that seemed to ripple like water. It was beautiful in its own way, a curtain of pure force hanging in empty air. What is it made of? Danny asked. Compressed graviton lattice with embedded force dispersion nodes.
Athril pulled up a technical diagram.
The energy is distributed through the lattice structure so that any impact is spread across the entire surface. No single point ever takes more than it can handle. Power source? Internal quantum battery. Rated for 600 hours of continuous use? Lisa was running calculations on her tablet, her fingers moving quickly across the screen. The math checks out. The energy distribution is nearly perfect. I cannot find a weakness in the numbers. There is always a weakness, Danny said. He walked closer to the observation window, studying the barrier from different angles. What happens when it absorbs energy? Where does that energy go? It redirects through the lattice structure, Crystalline 7 explained. The force is dispersed equally across all nodes simultaneously. That is what makes it so effective. Equally. Exactly equally. Kethril checked his data. Within 0.003% variance. It was the smile that Lisa had learned to both appreciate and fear. That is the flaw. I do not understand, Voss said, his Krellian mandibles clicking in confusion. Perfect distribution should be the strength, not the weakness. The better it distributes force, the more force it can handle. Perfect distribution requires perfect synchronization between all the nodes. They all have to react at exactly the same speed in exactly the same way. Danny turned to face his team. What happens if two impacts hit the barrier at slightly different times? Close enough together that the lattice tries to compensate for both simultaneously? Crystalline's form flickered as she processed the question. Theoretically, that would create a moment of uncertainty in the distribution algorithm. The system would not know how to divide its resources. But the window of vulnerability would be measured in nanoseconds. No one could time an attack that precisely. How fast can humans process visual information? Danny asked. Approximately 13 milliseconds for basic recognition. And how fast can a trained human react to a visual stimulus? Around 150 milliseconds for a physical response. Danny walked over to a storage locker and pulled out two small metal spheres. They were kinetic testing rounds, basically just solid balls of heavy metal used for impact experiments. Each one fit comfortably in his palm. Watch this. He walked to the entrance of the testing chamber and stepped inside. The barrier floated in front of him, its energy field humming softly. Danny took a breath, focused his attention, threw both spheres at the barrier in rapid succession. The timing was precise. His body knew exactly how to move, how to release. How to make the second throw happen, just a fraction of a second after the first. Years of throwing rocks at mining targets on his home colony had made the motion automatic. The first sphere hit the barrier. The energy field flared bright blue as it absorbed the impact and began distributing the force. Across its lattice structure, the second sphere arrived before that process was complete. The barrier system tried to handle both impacts at once, and for just a moment. It could not decide what to do. The second sphere punched straight through and embedded itself in the far wall of the testing chamber. The team stared in silence. Just defeated a military-grade kinetic barrier, Lisa said slowly, by throwing two rocks at it. Not rocks. Precision-timed projectiles. Danny grinned. But yes, basically. Kethril was already composing a report to send to the HFY developers. They will need to completely redesign their distribution algorithm. This flaw could have cost thousands of lives in actual combat. They will be grateful we found it first, or furious that we found it at all, Voss muttered. Over the following months, the Breakers tested system after system. Every species in the compact was developing new defensive technologies. And every one of those technologies had weaknesses waiting to be discovered. Danny found that Menthary phase shields were vulnerable to specific harmonic frequencies. A sound at exactly the right pitch could make the whole system collapse. Crystalline Evans spent a week analyzing the problem before she figured out how to fix it. Krellian. Ablating plating failed under sustained low-temperature exposure. The cold made the molecular bonds brittle. Voss was embarrassed that he had not noticed the flaw himself. But he designed a warming system that solved the problem. Even the redesigned Vorlani siege armor, which Kethril brought for testing, had a new weakness in its improved bonding compound. They found it together as a team and then worked together to make it stronger. You know what I have noticed? Lisa said one evening as the team shared a meal in the station's common room. Every species is good at building things to be strong in the ways they understand strength. Vorlani build hard armor because they value resilience. Men-3 build energy shields because they think in terms of forces. HFY build kinetic barriers because they fear physical impact. And humans, Crystalline Van asked. Humans are good at imagining different kinds of strength, different kinds of breaking. We do not assume that our way of thinking is the only way. Kethril clicked thoughtfully. My people have a saying. The strongest wall is the one that has never been tested. We always meant it as praise, as a sign that the wall was so intimidating that no one would dare attack it. Now I think it was a warning that we failed to understand.
Oh.
Danny looked around at his team. Aliens from species that had once viewed humans with suspicion or contempt. Now they worked together. Learned from each other, made each other better. This was what the galaxy could be if everyone stopped assuming they already knew everything. Maybe that is the real lesson, he said. Nothing is unbreakable. Everything fails eventually. But things that adapt, things that learn from their failures, they last longer than things that just try to be hard. The station's communication system suddenly chimed with an urgent alert. Everyone looked up. A known hostile force detected at the edge of compact space. All defensive assessment personnel report for immediate briefing. Danny stood, and his team rose with him. It's like theory becomes practice, Lisa said. Then let us go find out what needs breaking, Danny replied. The unknown hostiles called themselves nothing. They did not communicate. They did not negotiate. They simply appeared, destroyed everything in their path, and moved on to the next target. The Galactic Compact had named them the Surge because of how they moved through space. It's like a wave crashing over everything. They had appeared from beyond mapped space 3 weeks ago. In that time, they had destroyed 4 compact outposts without suffering a single loss. Their weapons cut through every defensive system like it was made of paper. Their armor shrugged off every attack like it was rain. Kethra Station was the last line of defense before the Surge. Fleet reached populated systems. If the station fell, billions of lives would be at risk. This was where Danny and his team had been sent, because nothing else had worked. This is insane, Lisa said as their shuttle approached the massive station. Compact warships filled the space around it, a fleet assembled from a dozen different species. It was the largest military force the Compact had ever gathered. We are vulnerability testers, not soldiers. We are here because nothing else has worked, Danny replied quietly. The Surge have armor that ignores everything the Compact has thrown at it. Command wants us to find a weakness. Cathrell was studying the intelligence reports on a display. The Surge armor operates on principles we do not understand. It appears to be organic, grown rather than manufactured. Energy weapons are absorbed. Kinetic weapons are redirected. Nuclear warheads have failed to breach their hulls. What about the creatures themselves? Voss asked. What do we know about their biology? Almost nothing. They have not communicated. They have not taken prisoners. They have not done anything except destroy. The station commander was a human named Admiral Pete Lawson. He was old, with gray hair and a face that looked like it had seen too many battles. He met them in the command center, and his expression was grim. The Breakers, he said. I have heard about your work. You found flaws in half the defensive systems in the Compact. Yes, sir, Danny said. We are hoping to find one in the Surge as well. You have 6 hours? That is when our sensors say their fleet will arrive. Lawson gestured toward a side corridor. We recovered wreckage from one of their smaller vessels. It is not much, but it is everything we have. The team gathered around the salvaged debris in a secure laboratory. A section of Surge armor, about 2 meters square, lay on an examination table. It was black and shiny, with a texture that looked almost alive. Strange patterns moved across its surface, pulsing slowly like a heartbeat. Crystalline 7 extended a sensory tendril and touched the material carefully. The structure is unlike anything in our databases. It appears to be a form of living metal. The cells actively respond to threats. Living armor, Lisa muttered. That explains why nothing works. It heals itself. Danny reached out and touched the surface. It was warm, almost like skin. He could feel it reacting to his touch, shifting slightly under his fingers. If it is alive, it has to follow the rules of living things. It has to eat. It has to get energy from somewhere. The Surge vessels do not appear to take on fuel or resources, Cathrell noted. They do not stop to refuel. They do not consume anything from the outposts they destroy. Then they are getting energy from somewhere else. Danny paced around the table, his mind working. What if the armor is not just protecting them? What if it is feeding on attacks? The team exchanged glances. Explain, Crystalline 7 said. Every weapon the Compact has used involves energy transfer. Plasma, kinetics, radiation, explosives. What if the armor absorbs that energy and uses it to sustain itself? What if we are literally making them stronger every time we attack? Lisa's eyes widened. That would explain why nothing works. The harder we hit them, the more powerful they become. So what do we do? Cathrell asked. Stop fighting entirely. Danny stared at the armor fragment. His grandfather's knife was in his pocket, as always. A simple tool. No energy. Just sharp metal made by human hands 100 years ago. Use weapons that do not give them anything, too. Eat. Admiral Lawson was skeptical when Danny explained the theory. Want my fleet to stop using energy weapons? And switch to what exactly? Swords and arrows? Modified kinetic projectiles, sir. Pure mass. No explosives. No energy signatures. Accelerated by external systems, so the energy transfer happens before impact. Small enough to get through before their armor can adapt. You are asking me to throw rocks at an invading alien fleet. Very fast rocks, sir. Fired in patterns too complex for the armor to predict. The Admiral stared at Danny for a long moment. Then he laughed, but there was no humor in it. We have tried everything else. I suppose rocks cannot be any worse. The battle began 2 hours later. The Surge fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel like a swarm of black insects. 47 vessels, ranging from small fighters to a massive command ship at the center. They move. Ed, with perfect coordination, is flowing toward the station in waves. Admiral Lawson had repositioned his fleet according to Danny's plan. Instead of forming a wall, the ships spread out in a loose pattern. Their main weapons remained cold and silent. All ships begin Operation Sandstorm, Lawson commanded. The compact vessels started firing modified projectiles. Tiny metal spheres, barely larger than a human finger, accelerated to incredible speeds by external launchers, then released to coast toward their targets with no energy signature at all. The first wave struck the Surge fighters. For a moment, nothing happened. Then one of the fighters began spinning wildly. Atmosphere vented from dozens of tiny holes in its hull. More fighters followed, their living armor unable to adapt to threats it could not absorb. It is working, Lisa breathed, but the Surge adapted faster than expected. The larger vessels began generating interference fields, disrupting the paths of incoming projectiles. The massive command ship at the center of their fleet remained completely untouched, its armor pulsing with energy absorbed from stray shots. We are losing effectiveness, Cathrell reported. They are learning our tactics. Danny watched the battle on the tactical display. The command ship was the key. Everything else in the Surge fleet moved in response to it. If the Surge were a single organism spread across many bodies, that ship was the brain. I need a shuttle, he said suddenly. Admiral Lawson turned to stare at him. What? The small projectiles work on fighters, but the command ship is too well protected. I need to get close and find its specific weakness. That is suicide. Maybe. But if we do not stop that command ship, everyone dies anyway.
Ow.
Danny was in a small transport shuttle, flying toward the heart of the enemy fleet. Lisa had insisted on coming. So had Cathrell. They had argued about it, but Danny knew better than to fight them when they were determined. Approaching the command ship, Lisa reported. Her voice was steady, but Danny could see her hands shaking. Their armor is thicker here. More complex. Up close, the Surge command ship was terrifying and beautiful at the same time. Its surface flowed and shifted like a living thing. Patterns moved across its hull, spirals and fractals that seemed almost hypnotic. It is not just armor, Danny realized. The whole ship is one organism. One giant living creature. The armor is its skin, then where is its brain? Cathrell asked. Danny pointed to a section near the center of the vessel. The patterns there were different, more concentrated, like all the nerve signals in a body meeting at a single point. That is where we need to go. How do we get inside? Danny pulled out his grandfather's knife. The old blade had no energy signature. No technology the Surge would recognize as a threat. Just sharp metal and 100 years of human history. We land. We walk. We cut. The shuttle touched down on the command ship's hull. The surface shifted beneath their feet, trying to push them away, but without energy to absorb. The armor's response was slow and confused. They moved quickly toward the nerve center, cutting through organic barriers with their simple blades. Inside, the ship was warm and wet, like the inside of a living body. Strange structures pulsed around them, organs whose purpose they could only guess at. Finally, they reached it. A chamber at the heart of the vessel, filled with a massive neural structure that glowed with soft bioluminescence. The brain of the command ship. The mind controlling the entire Surge fleet. Danny approached slowly, his knife ready. The brain pulsed, and he felt something touch his thoughts. Not words exactly, but meaning. Hunger. Endless, desperate hunger. The Surge consumed because consumption was all they knew. Energy, resources, life. Always more, never enough. You do not have to do this, Danny said, not knowing if the creature could understand. There are other ways to survive. Ways that do not require destroying everything else. The brain pulsed again. Confusion. The concept was completely foreign to it. Let me show you something, Danny said. He thought about Earth. About humans who had once been hunters and killers, but had learned to farm. To build, to create, instead of just consume. About a species that had looked at the stars and decided to explore them together instead of fighting over scraps. The brain quivered. Interest, uncertainty. For the first time in its existence. It was encountering something it did not want to eat. We break things, Danny continued. It is what we do. But we also fix things. We find weaknesses so we can make things stronger. We tear down so we can build better. A long moment passed. The neural structure pulsed with colors Danny had never seen before. Then the brain began to change. The patterns across the command ship shifted, and throughout the battle, the entire Surge fleet went still. Ships that had been attacking suddenly stopped. Weapons that had been firing fell silent. Lisa watched in amazement. What did you do? I showed it another way to feed, Danny said. Not by consuming everything, but by learning. By growing, by adapting without destroying. The Surge did not become allies that day. The negotiations would take months, led by diplomats far more skilled than Danny would ever be. But the battle ended without the genocide everyone had expected. An enemy became a potential partner. A species that had only known consumption began learning cooperation, and it had all started because a human. Cadet looked at something rated Unbreakable and asked a simple question. Years later, Danny stood in the Galactic Academy's Hall of Memory, where statues honored those who had shaped the Compact's history. His own likeness stood among them now, a young man with a simple knife, positioned between ancient warriors and legendary scientists. He did not feel he deserved it. Lisa stood beside him. Older now, but still the same friend who had warned him not to do something stupid all those years ago. You never did give yourself enough credit, she said. I just break things. Other people do the hard work of putting them back together. Breaking things is easy. Breaking them in exactly the right way so they can be rebuilt better. That is the hard part. She smiled at him. That is what makes you special. Kethril approached them, his forearms carrying a stack of data files. The Vorlani have requested another consultation. They want your team to assess their newest armor design before deployment. Let me guess, Danny said. They are calling it Unbreakable again. Naturally. Danny laughed and touched his pocket, where his grandfather's knife still rested after all these years. Some things never changed. And some things, with exactly the right pressure applied at exactly the right point, changed everything. That was the human way. That was what made them different from every other species in the galaxy. They did not just accept the world as it was. They looked at it, found the cracks, and made it better, even if it meant breaking it first.